These tractors were never meant to become legends. They weren't designed to last half a century. Some were rushed designs, some were built under political pressure, some were considered mistakes the moment they left the factory. Engineers expected them to fail. Manufacturers quietly moved on. Farmers assumed they'd replace them soon. But somehow, these tractors refused to disappear. Not because they were perfect, not because they were advanced, but because they survived where logic said they shouldn't. These are 10 old tractors that should have died, but never did. Number 1. Same Explorer 70. When the same Explorer 70 entered the market, it was already considered a bad idea. By that time, most tractor manufacturers had reached a firm conclusion. Air-cooled engines were outdated. Radiators, coolant systems, and temperature-controlled designs were the future. Engineers believed air-cooled tractors couldn't handle long working hours, heavy loads, or extreme heat. The Explorer 70 ignored all of that advice. Instead of following the industry, Same doubled down on simplicity. The Explorer 70's engine wasn't fast, aggressive, or powerful by modern standards. It was deliberately restrained. Low RPM operation meant internal components were never pushed hard. Oversized cooling fins compensated for the lack of liquid cooling. And most importantly, there was no radiator to clog, crack, leak, or freeze. That absence changed everything. In dusty regions where liquid-cooled tractors overheated due to blocked radiators, the Explorer 70 simply kept running hotter, but never hot enough to fail. In cold regions, there was no coolant to freeze and destroy the block. In remote areas, there was nothing complex to repair. This tractor wasn't efficient, it wasn't refined, it wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. Farmers quickly realized that the Explorer 70 didn't demand attention. Oil changes were basic, fuel quality didn't need to be perfect, maintenance didn't require specialists. The engine tolerated abuse, not because it was strong, but because it was never stressed. Decades later, many Explorer 70 tractors are still doing daily agricultural work across southern Europe, Africa, and parts of Asia, not as collector pieces, not as restored classics, but as working machines. It shouldn't have survived a market that rejected air cooling. It shouldn't have outlasted newer, more advanced tractors, but it did because failure points were removed, not reinforced. Number 2. Renault 651. When the Renault 651 entered farms, it entered under a cloud of doubt. Renault was known for cars. That alone made farmers suspicious. Agricultural machinery lives a brutal life. Long hours, poor maintenance, heavy loads, and constant vibration. Most farmers didn't believe a car manufacturer could understand that reality, so expectations were low. Ironically, that worked in the tractor's favor. Renault engineers didn't try to innovate, they didn't chase horsepower wars or advanced systems. They built the 651 using conservative design principles that were already proven to work. The diesel engine was naturally aspirated and deliberately underpowered for its size. That meant it ran comfortably below its limits, even under load. The gearbox was slow and heavy, but nearly indestructible. The hydraulic system was simple, mechanical, and forgiving. Electrical components were minimal. No sensors, no computers, no unnecessary wiring. This tractor didn't impress anyone, but it never failed dramatically either. Farmers used it with no respect. It was overloaded, left outside, started in poor conditions, and serviced late, or not at all. And yet, the Renault 651 just kept working. Because nothing inside it was optimized for peak performance, nothing was fragile enough to fail early. Wear happened slowly. Failures happened predictably. Repairs were straightforward. Today, many Renault 651 tractors are still operating with original engines, original gearboxes, and decades of hard labor behind them. They didn't become legends because nobody expected them to survive in the first place. They weren't trusted, they weren't admired, they were simply impossible to kill.
Number 3.
Hürlimann XT Series. The Hürlimann XT Series was never meant to be popular. Swiss engineering carries a reputation for precision, but the XT Series wasn't about fine tolerances or cutting-edge design. It was about eliminating failure by brute logic. If a part might wear out, make it bigger. If a component might break, overbuild it. The result was a tractor that felt excessive. Heavy chassis, thick axles, massive engine blocks. Everything was larger than necessary. This made the XT Series expensive, slow, and unattractive to buyers chasing value or performance. Sales were limited. Many dealers avoided them entirely. On paper, it looked like a commercial failure. In reality, it was a mechanical success. The engines ran at low RPM, producing torque without stress. Internal components were never close to their mechanical limits. Gearboxes handled loads effortlessly because they were designed to handle far more than they ever received. Owners quickly noticed something strange. Nothing wore out. Not quickly, not dramatically, sometimes not at all. While lighter tractors went through clutches, bearings, and drivetrains, Hürlimann XT tractors quietly accumulated decades of work. Failures were rare, and when they happened, they were predictable and repairable. These tractors survived not because they were advanced, but because they were conservative to an extreme. They weren't designed to last forever. They were designed as if failure was unacceptable, and that mindset made them nearly immortal. Number 4. Valmet 702. The Valmet 702 was engineered for one enemy: cold. Finland's climate destroys machinery. Oil thickens, rubber cracks, batteries fail, metal contracts. Tractors that work fine elsewhere simply stop functioning in deep winter. Valmet responded by stripping the tractor down to its mechanical core. The 702 used simple mechanical fuel injection. Cold start reliability was prioritized over performance. Wiring was minimal. Electronics were avoided entirely. Everything was designed to work when conditions were hostile. What nobody expected was that this cold-only tractor would thrive outside cold climates. Because the engine was never pushed hard, heat wasn't a problem. Because systems were mechanical, dust and moisture didn't cause catastrophic failures. Because the drivetrain was overbuilt, heavy use didn't shorten its life. Valmet 702 tractors slowly spread beyond Scandinavia into warmer regions, where they proved just as durable. Farmers discovered that a tractor built to survive winter also survived neglect, heat, and long hours. It didn't rely on ideal environments. It relied on tolerance. Today, Valmet 702 tractors still exist in forests, farms, and remote regions long after tractors designed for comfort and efficiency have disappeared. It was built to survive winter. It survived history instead.
Number 5. UTB Universal 445. The UTB Universal 445 was never meant to impress anyone. From the moment it appeared, critics dismissed it as crude, cheap, and poorly finished. Compared to Western tractors of the same era, it looked rough. Welds weren't pretty, panels didn't line up perfectly, controls felt stiff and basic. Many assumed it would fall apart within a few years, but refinement was never its purpose. The Universal 445 was built in an environment where resources were limited and expectations were brutal. Engineers didn't optimize for comfort or efficiency, they optimized for survival. The diesel engine used low compression, which meant it could tolerate poor quality fuel without knocking itself apart. Power output was modest, but torque delivery was steady and forgiving. Internally, tolerances were wide, not because of poor engineering, but because wide tolerances survive abuse. Bearings didn't seize easily, pistons weren't stressed, heat buildup was slow and manageable. The gearbox wasn't smooth, but it was thick, heavy, and almost impossible to strip under normal farm abuse. Farmers treated this tractor brutally. It was overloaded, it was driven incorrectly, maintenance was delayed or ignored entirely. And yet, the Universal 445 continued to run. Not smoothly, not quietly, but reliably. Where more refined tractors failed due to precision parts wearing out, the UTB simply absorbed punishment. It didn't care about perfect oil. It didn't care about gentle operation. It didn't demand attention. Decades later, these tractors are still found working in rural regions where replacement isn't an option. They're not restored. They're not preserved. They're used. The Universal 445 didn't survive despite being crude. It survived because it was crude. Number 6. Landini R Series. The Landini R Series was already old-fashioned when it was new. While other manufacturers chased modernization, Landini stayed stubbornly conservative. Manual controls dominated the cabin. Clutches were heavy. Steering required effort. Comfort was an afterthought. Many buyers walked past it without a second look. But beneath that outdated exterior was a machine built with industrial logic. The engines were intentionally understressed. Power delivery was smooth and slow, not aggressive. RPMs stayed low, which reduced internal wear. There was no attempt to squeeze extra performance out of the design. The philosophy was simple. If it doesn't need to work harder, don't force it to. The rear axle and transmission were built thick and heavy, closer to industrial equipment than modern agricultural machines. Gears weren't lightweight, shafts weren't slimmed down. Everything carried margin. That margin is why these tractors survived. Landini R tractors were often used daily for decades without major overhauls. They didn't feel fast, they didn't feel modern, but they didn't fail unexpectedly. When parts eventually wore out, they did so slowly. There were warnings, noise increased, performance dropped gradually. Nothing snapped without notice. Modern tractors often die suddenly. The Landini R Series aged, and aging gracefully is why many of them are still alive today, quietly working long after flashier machines disappeared.
Number 7. Fortschritt ZT300. The Fortschritt ZT300 was born from a system that valued endurance over efficiency. Designed in East Germany, this tractor wasn't meant to compete globally. It wasn't built to win sales awards. It was built to operate continuously, under supervision, in large state-run farms where downtime was unacceptable. Comfort didn't matter. Fuel consumption didn't matter. Weight didn't matter. Survival did. The ZT300 was heavy, awkward, and intimidating. Its frame was rigid and thick. The engine was slow revving and deliberately unstressed. The gearbox was oversized, built to handle loads it would rarely encounter. Operators weren't gentle, schedules were unforgiving, maintenance was often delayed. And yet, the tractor endured. When political systems collapsed and factories shut down, the ZT300 didn't stop working. Many outlived the infrastructure that once supported them. Farmers kept them running because they had no choice and discovered they didn't need much help to survive. Even today, some ZT300 tractors remain operational, decades after the country that built them ceased to exist in its original form. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't efficient, but it was designed to outlive uncertainty, and it did. Number 8. Goldoni Universal. The Goldoni Universal never tried to be powerful. From the beginning, it was designed for a narrow role: vineyards, hillsides, orchards, and tight agricultural spaces where large tractors were useless. Small wheels, compact frame, modest engine. Many assumed it would wear out quickly. But something unexpected happened. Because the Goldoni Universal was never overloaded, it was never stressed. It worked light-duty tasks at low speeds, day after day, year after year. The engine didn't struggle. The transmission wasn't pushed. The frame didn't flex. Low stress meant low wear. Where larger tractors suffered fatigue from heavy implements and constant strain, the Goldoni operated comfortably within its design limits. Oil stayed cleaner, temperatures stayed lower, components aged slowly. Farmers relied on it because it wasn't ambitious, and that restraint paid off. Many Goldoni Universal tractors today are still operational, not because they were overbuilt, but because they were used exactly as intended. No heroics, no overloads, just steady, predictable work.
Sometimes survival isn't about strength. Sometimes it's about never putting yourself in a position where strength is tested.
Number 9. Same Minotauro. The same Minotauro was never designed to last decades. In fact, it wasn't even designed to be important. It was created as a small, practical tractor for light agricultural work, something affordable, simple, and easy to replace. Engineers didn't expect it to become a long-term solution. It was meant to fill a gap, not define a legacy. That assumption turned out to be completely wrong. The Minotauro's biggest weakness on paper was its underpowered engine. Compared to other tractors in its category, it produced modest horsepower and wasn't capable of aggressive work. But that weakness became its greatest strength. Because the engine lacked excess power, it was rarely stressed. Operators couldn't overload it easily, even if they tried. RPMs stayed low, internal temperatures remained stable, mechanical wear happened slowly and evenly. The tractor's weight distribution also played a role. Despite its modest output, the Minotauro was heavier than expected for its size, which improved traction and reduced shock loads on the drivetrain. That meant fewer sudden stresses on gears, shafts, and bearings. The design was basic. No advanced hydraulics, no sensitive electronics, no systems that demanded perfect conditions. Farmers didn't treat it carefully. It was often used as a secondary machine, left outside, started cold, and serviced late. But it didn't react badly to neglect. Its mechanical simplicity absorbed mistakes instead of amplifying them. Over time, something unusual happened. Tractors that were meant to replace the Minotauro failed first. More powerful, more complex machines suffered from wear, overheating, and component failure. Meanwhile, the Minotauro kept running, not fast, not impressively, but reliably. It became durable not because anyone planned it, but because no one pushed it hard enough to kill it. Sometimes longevity isn't engineered. Sometimes it happens when expectations are low and stress stays lower. Number 10. David Brown 880 Early Working Variants. The David Brown 880 is often remembered, but not in the way that matters. Most discussions focus on later, refined versions or models that gained collector status. But the early working variants of the 880 lived a very different life. These tractors weren't restored. They weren't admired, they were simply used, and that's why they survived. Early 880s were conservative machines. Power output was modest, engine tuning was restrained, and components were designed with safety margins rather than performance targets. Nothing inside the tractor was operating near its limit. These tractors didn't live glamorous lives. They pulled small implements, they hauled loads slowly, they worked long hours without drama. Because they weren't pushed aggressively, wear accumulated gradually. Failures were rare and predictable. When parts eventually needed replacement, the tractor didn't collapse, it adapted. Farmers rebuilt them instead of replacing them, not because they were legendary, but because they made economic sense. The design was understandable, mechanical repairs, nothing was locked behind specialized tools or proprietary systems. As newer tractors entered the market with more power and more complexity, many of them burned out faster. The early 880s didn't compete, they outlasted. Today, some of these tractors are still working quietly, often unnoticed. They don't appear in greatest tractors lists, they don't attract attention at shows, but they're alive. They survived because they were never pushed to impress anyone. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.